cloud is the new normal, in the sense now that's how things really work in the industry nowadays. Amazon and cloud computing. How did a company like Amazon, which had nothing to do with IT, get into this particular field? Then what's really the big deal about cloud computing and getting started on the cloud journey? So very simply put, it's exactly similar to an electricity model. So we have an electricity connection, and whenever some kind of a new gadget comes in, if we buy a new iPhone or some kind of a new phone, we never worry about as to how we are going to get it charged, right? We simply buy that particular electronic device, come to our home, plug it into the plug and start using and charge it, right? That's how things work. That's the electricity model, right? And what are the simple, you can say the terms associated or the principles associated with electricity? It's like on demand. Whenever you need it, it's there, you plug it in, you start consuming electricity, right? Very simple. It's pay as you go. Whatever you consume in a month, you pay the bill for that at the end of the month. You get a bill from electricity board or the electricity company and you pay the bill. And it's always available, right? In the sense like it's 24/7, you have electricity model. So this is how exactly this particular cloud computing is, right? It's nothing very different. Just like you have electricity, here it is infrastructure delivered as a service or applications as a service. And all the same characteristics of that particular service, that whatever kind of IT infrastructure or IT solutions that you need, you don't have to buy, just like electricity, you don't have to buy a generator to generate your own electricity. And similarly here, you don't have to buy your own IT infrastructure or some kind of a fixed kind of an IT assets, and you simply take a connection, right, which is simply like opening an account, just like you open your email account on Gmail or Yahoo or some other kind of Hotmail or all those kind of other things. You just go to the website, create an account. It's very simple, just like that. So you have an account, and all the same characteristics which I mentioned about electricity applies over here. In the sense, it's on demand. Whenever you need it, it's available as much as you need it. Pay as you go. Whatever you consume during a month, you pay for it. At the end of the month, you get a bill for that. It's uniform. It's like a standard service which is delivered across the world for same service to everyone across the world. And it's always available, right? It's 24/7. Let's move forward in the sense, what we are actually seeing is that cloud has actually become the new normal. When we say the new normal, it's the first and the default choice for most CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, IT leaders, or all kinds of technology leaders. This is the default and the standard choice for a vast majority of such leaders worldwide. So let's move forward as to a little bit about Amazon and cloud computing. How did this really, a company like Amazon, which was primarily a retail company, started from selling books online, and then of course they started selling other stuff, but it was essentially an online retail company. How did a company like Amazon get into something like this, which is cloud computing, which is IT? So there are a few things or changes which are happening across the world, which I'm sure all of you have realized or seen on a daily basis as to how things have really changed over the last several years. I mean, one is of course the explosion of the use of internet. So when we talk about internet, the scale is different, and that is also where it covers a little bit, and I'll try to touch a little bit about the growth which was discussed in the previous session about how can SMEs grow, because this thing is primarily about scale. Internet means scale, right? So if you were a company which was maybe 25 years back, right? So at that point of a time, your market was limited. You were serving your market, which was right next there, in the sense that the same city. If you are a company based in Ludhiana, you will serve maybe your customers in and around Ludhiana or Punjab, something like that. But with this internet, things have changed dramatically. Now it's like you could be, and this has really happened, I mean, you could be a company or a small startup or anything, even in a small one room, but with internet, the entire world is your market, right? So the scales are very different, and this, in my opinion, most of my suggestion, whatever I can, would be that this is something which everyone should look towards scale, because this is something which really means scale. And that is exactly what was happening to Amazon.com, that when it was serving all the customers across the world, the scale was very, very different. So with that kind of a scale, it realized that the kind of infrastructure or the IT services which it was using, it was not sufficient to service the needs of the organization, the way it was growing. And secondly, also what you would have seen is that in retail business, right, and probably in several other businesses, the way it works is that there are some seasons, or there are some particular months, or maybe some kind of a holiday season, like we have Diwali or we have some other kind of a festival. That is when the sales really peak. A lot of people buy a lot of stuff in and around that particular time. So this is exactly what was happening even with Amazon.com. That in US, you know about, they have a holiday season about around Christmas, around November, December period, when they buy most of the stuff, right? So to cater to that kind of a demand, obviously the company needed that kind of an IT infrastructure behind the scenes to manage that. But for the most of the other months, it was lying idle. And this is actually what happens with most other companies as well, that you actually provision for the peak, but you are actually not using that infrastructure majority of the time. So with that particular thing in mind, they kind of restarted redesigning all the services so that the entire infrastructure can be used by all the organization in a web service kind of a model. Rather than using using a particular box or some kind of a storage, they started saying, okay, fine, how can we kind of do certain things about it that maybe other divisions, other people can also start using it. So that is how they started with a simple storage kind of a service, right, where you just kind of store various all kinds of data, databases, backups. So that is how they started, and then they started exposing this. But very quickly they realized, and that's a little bit about the organization culture in terms of innovation and how it scales, and that is actually a different topic, so I'll not go too deep into that. But that is when they realized that this is something which we are doing internally for us, right, can actually be really of good use to other companies as well. So that is when, on an experimental kind of a basis, they started giving or offering the same services to other companies. And that is when people kind of started really picking it up, because the way they were offering it was so simple and so easy that you just need to go to your website, swipe your credit card earlier on and start using. Earlier on, for the same kind of a thing, you need to talk to someone and order stuff, maybe do some negotiations, and then after several months, maybe a few weeks or even several months, your stuff will arrive. And for a small person, it was simply unviable, right? If I'm a big company, then I have all the resources at my disposal, I can buy all kinds of stuff. But if I'm an individual, if I'm a small company, I don't have that kind of a resources. So this opened an absolutely new world for very, very small organizations, small or even individuals to start experimenting and start using that service. So that is how it kind of really started, and then from one service to the next to the next, it has, like we have now maybe around 100 services which are there, but it started from one single service. So that is how AWS was born, and that is actually the beginning of cloud computing. And that is, when we talk about cloud computing, that's how it really started, and now it has kind of become a simple common term. And as a result of that, no one had thought this kind of a thing earlier, and the entire IT industry is transforming. So the way things used to work 20 years back, 15 years back, or even 5 years back, things in the IT industry are working very, very differently. All the traditional companies, they are having to change their business models because of this, and someone who had nothing to do with IT is actually now in a leadership kind of a position going forward. So let's move forward. Why cloud computing for SMEs? So as I was mentioning that not every company or an individual is of the size of a very, very large company, right? That they have all the kind of resources at their disposal. So the first thing which really kind of kickstarts or people start talking about or using it is obviously related to cost, right? that I want to lower my cost, and that is how people think that I will actually start using this and my costs will get impacted, right? So which is actually a real good factor, and the reason for that is because one, for a company like AWS, we have huge economies of scale, right? So because of that, because we have such large economies of scale, we are able to bring down the prices continuously on a regular basis. So moving quickly as to how one can kind of really get started with this. So it's nothing hugely complicated. There are plenty of things which organizations, depending upon their own nature and their own understanding and the kind of skills, the people they have, the kind of leadership they have in terms of their vision, etc. But a lot of companies, that's how they get started. They start with simple development and test kind of a thing where you do certain experimentation, whatever your internal development or test kind of environments are, that's where you start using something like AWS. Then there's a big requirement or issue or challenge related to data storage, backup. So those are certain other things which people kind of get started. Then a big issue or a challenge with a traditional kind of a setup is disaster recovery. A lot of issues or incidents keep on happening within my own company where things fail, and then what do you do kind of to really have a disaster kind of a scenario. Then another big change which is happening all around has been related to mobile, right? As to how people have been using mobile over the last few 5, 10 years, and so much has moved on to mobile in terms of the mobile application. So even in your organizations, there could be people who could be using mobile, and they would be visiting their suppliers, your customers, and then a lot of things can actually happen on the mobile, and this is the beginning of that digital transformation kind of a journey which really happens. That you start using a little bit, give it some of your people, rather than they coming back to your office and doing certain things, they can simply be at your customer's place and start punch certain data in the mobile itself, and that's how things kind of really get started. Then new applications, whenever anyone is doing something new, that's how you get started. ERP, CRM, a lot of the traditional companies use various kinds of ERPs, as an example, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft. So all such technologies or all such softwares can easily run on this kind of a platform, and we have hundreds and thousands of customers who run their SAP and other ERP applications on AWS. Then the last two things, which is the next big thing which are happening, is related to big data and analytics. So some of you might have heard these terms, but that's like cloud computing, whatever it was 5 years back, we are at a similar kind of a stage for things like big data, things like IoT. IoT is Internet of Things, right? And then artificial intelligence. So those are the things which are really going to change things very, very dramatically over the next 5-10 years. So just a quick example in the sense, a lot of time we had been hearing about this smart home kind of a concept. People were wondering as to when and where am I going to use a bulb which is connected to the internet, how does it really help me? But now after so many years, it's now beginning to make some sense that if some of you might have heard the news about CES, Consumer Electronics Show, which is going on in the US, some coverage on some TV channels as well, that now there's a real big adoption of that entire technology. I can simply walk into my room and say, switch on this particular light or switch off this particular equipment. So all this thing which was being talked about for a long time is now becoming real. By the next 5 to 10 years, the change is probably going to be even more dramatic and at a much rapid rate than it has happened earlier. So just on the closing part as to why AWS, why should anyone look at something like AWS? So AWS is a company, as I said, which really started this about 10 years back. So it's a long experience, and we also have a presence in India now, so we launched the region in India in Bombay. It's the widest range of services. No one else has the kind of range of services that AWS provides. We have almost 100 different services which are there, all related to IT. And then within IT, as I mentioned, everything about IoT or artificial intelligence and whatnot. Stable platform. There are no ifs and buts. things work on AWS. So there's no questions asked, everything works on AWS. And there are literally, as I mentioned, there are more than 1 million customers who are using AWS. There's a vast, all kinds of segments, all kinds of industries, whatever size and shape, whatever application that anyone can think of, there's a customer who would be using that kind of an application on AWS. And chances are some of you may actually already be using AWS without knowing it, right? Because there are several applications behind the scenes, as I was mentioning. There is an organization like AWS Technology which comes from AWS, like Dropbox and various other technologies, and including the next one which is going to be talked about, Salesforce, right? So there are several applications or several big organizations behind the scenes. They run on Amazon, and a lot of you could actually be using AWS services. And even in the sense like the kind of the phones that you use, there's a lot of things which go behind the scenes on those phones, and then a lot of that technology could actually be behind the scenes on AWS. So similarly here as well, which is Salesforce, some of you might be using that. They also run, as an example, on AWS. So with that, I think I'll come to the end and hand it over to the next presentation by Salesforce.